Welcome to Landlord Diaries, where we talk about midterm rentals and the opportunities behind them. We'll share landlord stories, talk about maximizing investment potential, and discuss how to live the very best landlord life. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Furnished Finder, the place for everything midterm rentals. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.
We are back live with another episode of the Landlord Diaries. We really appreciate all of you being here with us. We want to know your feedback, so please shoot us over an email through Furnished Finder or comment on the episodes. We're here for you guys, and we appreciate y'all being here, and we're just having a lot of fun getting to hear all these different stories about midterm and just real estate investment strategies in general. And reminder, this is Kelly Bailey, your host from the Austin, Texas area.
Kelly and I are having a day over here, everyone, and part of this podcast is us being transparent. And it is only Tuesday, but it is the Mondayest Tuesday I've had in a long time. And my son now calls Mondays Mondays, so I'm just going to say today is a heck of a Monday. Justin is here with us today, you guys. Justin is like real estate. I mean, he's like all the things. Investor. He has his own escrow service. He has a property management team that he works with. He is so fantastic and such a joy to work with. Super down to earth. You'll also probably hear some blips from our technology today, which enjoy because we are real people and it is a Monday.
Hey guys, we have Justen Brown with us today from the San Diego area. Justen is an avid real estate investor, family man, fisherman, and co-founder of Alliance Escrow for California investors. Justen has a large real estate portfolio and pursues a variety of strategies, including furnished midterm rentals. So let's start off with a fun fact. So Justen, I think you have shared with me you get up around 4 a.m. and I believe your family just went on like a fun RV trip somewhat recently around the country. What do you want to share with us about that experience?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me today. Pretty excited to be here. Yes, I like to wake up early. Early bird gets the worm, and you get a physical activity out of the way, and then you can also get a jump on the day. And then, yeah, fun fact, we love to travel, and it's funny, we travel for fun, but also as we travel, I look for investment opportunities too.
Awesome, love it. So what was your favorite spot on your journey?
Oh, well, we've knocked out 42 states over the last 2 years.
Woo!
So we'd be here for quite a few hours. Something about every town in every state that we've been to.
Okay, so we would love to know how you got into real estate, kind of your backstory, how your real estate journey started.
Yeah, so I actually got into real estate when I was about 16, 17 years old. My brother was in the real estate industry and I was still in high school. So he said, hey, do you want to go to college or do you want to come into the business? And couldn't figure out the time if I wanted to go into that. And by the time I was a senior, I made a goal to graduate high school with my real estate license and pursued that and never looked back.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So what was that like buying a property at 17 and 18 years old? That just is wild to me.
Well, at that time, I was 18 when I bought my first place, and lending guidelines were pretty loose back then.
Nice.
And so it was, if you, as they say in the industry, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a real estate license. Fog a mirror, you could get a loan. Luckily, I'm pretty frugal and conservative, and I was able to, have good financials to get that loan. And it was exciting, and it was pretty scary at the same time. You're taking on a debt of, several hundreds of thousands of dollars as a teenager.
Even as an adult, it's still scary.
if I had to go and do it all over again, yes, I would have bought it and slept on the couch and rent out the rooms and done the house hack that way. Fortunately for me, I got married at a young age, and
Oh.
so we bought the place, and then you got married, and then moved in there and made that our home.
That's amazing. So where is your current real estate focus? What's your portfolio look like right now, and kind of what's your strategy?
Yeah, so right now, my portfolio right now consists a little bit over 100 doors, and going aggressively after 200, and underwriting properties almost weekly, making offers weekly, if not every other week. And then I think my focus is really to get to that 200 door mark. And then also, I kind of break it down to either 200 doors or a specific cash flow number that I want to achieve. And just kind of, I juggle both those, go back and forth. Whichever one comes first, I think would be, I'd be okay with. But it consists of condos, small multifamily, commercial, mixed use, and larger apartment complexes. And I mean, within that as well, I've flipped several hundred properties, from single family to multifamily to mobile homes.
And are they all within the San Diego area, or are you spread out geographically as well?
I do not discriminate, so I go wherever the deal goes. So I have been spread out over about 6, 7 different states. And each time I go to a state, I kind of go through that due diligence process of finding your team. And I'd say that was one of the challenging aspects of learning how to invest is, okay, well, who do I need and why do I need them? And then when I go into an area, you start going down the list of, okay, who do I need? Why do I need them? And how do they fit into the playbook? And then just, set it from there.
He always makes it sound
Right.
so simple.
Just 100 doors, Kelly. No problem. It's fine.
I would love for my portfolio to feel so simple. You've got a midterm rental as well. So what led you to get into the midterm rental space, and how's your midterm rental doing?
Yeah, great. One, never heard of midterm rental until about 6, 8 months ago. So I don't know when your guys' company was launched. However, I listened to about 3 to 4 podcasts a day. I mean, if I can get more in, I will get more in. It's usually when I'm driving to school, driving the kids to school. I'm at the gym, either in the morning or the night. I'm just constantly listening to it. And I heard on about 6, 8 months ago, just a lot of podcasts where somebody's like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this Furnished Finder thing." I was like, "Huh, this really," and then they just go into it. And I said, I need to really start looking into this. And I started reaching out to the people that I heard on the podcast saying, hey, I'd love to hear a little bit more about it. What was your experience? Very similar, like what the antithesis of this podcast is. And I did that. And so finally got one, and it is going very well. It's a little cottage house here in the city of La Mesa. It's a very cool little micro town, and it's got a lot of hipster vibes to it, and it's going really, really well. So I did everything I needed to do, had some challenges, just like anything else, learning the system, learning the vetting process, reaching out to people. But once I actually started going through the motions and practicing every single day what I needed to do, it got pretty easy, and it got easy really quick. A lot of times, most people are always asking, how do you qualify the person that you want to choose? And as you go through the motions, eventually they'll qualify themselves, and then you'll have too many applicants. But it was also like it's one of the things that's hard to, because you got to tell somebody, no, I'm sorry, mine's already booked.
Yep.
I wish you the best of luck.
Yeah,
but it's going very well, so I'm stoked.
I'm glad to hear it's going well. It's interesting. I think the midterm market and strategy, like you said, has boomed over the past 8, 12, 14 months, somewhere around there. I think a lot of it, spurred from COVID. People were quarantining. People were thinking about like, oh, okay, we're doing homeschool now. We're doing remote school. I'm working from home, and it opened up this kind of possibilities that a lot of consumers and travelers had where it wasn't there before. So yeah, I'm glad that you have taken the dive, because it is, I feel like there's so many advantages, and there's so many perks that you have that kind of carry the perks over from a short-term rental, but without a lot of the constant turnover and the headaches. And, it's a nice middle ground. So that's great. I would love to hear, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would as well, about how you stay so organized. Because like Kelly said, like her and I are sitting here like, oh, 100 properties, no big deal. Like, yeah, that's impressive. But that's also a lot to stay organized with, not only with your teams, but like on the back end, as far as tracking vacancies and accounting and all that. What kind of tips do you have for your listeners of things that they can implement, from any level, to make sure that they stay as organized?
Yeah, good question. So I wish I was even more organized than I am now. And I work on it every single day, every single week. Like there's something that I'm like, okay, hey, I can get better at this, specifically just with my own business and my own portfolio. But the one thing is just have a really good team around you. And I can't stress it enough. Like you do have to have faith, and you do have to have trust in the people that are on your team. And then once you get them, then you set the roles, responsibilities for them, and you hold them accountable to that. And if they don't adhere to that, then you find out, hey, what's going on, and see if you need to make some adjustments. Occasionally we have to make a pivot. But also one thing that's really, really important for me to stay organized is I calendar almost everything. So if you look at my weekly and monthly calendar, like we have our specific things that we need to, have a conversation on, whether it's vacancies, rent loss, like where are we falling short in certain projects, certain properties, what needs to happen when on certain projects, what certain properties, and I calendar all that stuff. And then also, like, we know generally 95% of the time rents are due right around the first of the month. And unlike mortgages are paid in arrears, rents are paid forward. So we know roughly within the 1st to the 5th or the 1st to the 10th, like that's how we can track all of our P&Ls. We can track all of our expenses. You can also adjust everything to where I want my expenses coming out on a specific date every single month. And for every project and every property, and I say project and property because sometimes I'll have one house, and a project will have, 36 doors or 40 doors or 78 doors or whatever. But you can usually figure out when your rents are going to be coming in, when your expenses are due, take out any vacancy, take out any maintenance, and then you have your leftover, which is your profit or your cash flow. But you can usually do all of that within the first of the month, and then it's just a matter of, okay, to adjust on the team or to see how you're doing with your goals, is you can set up that monthly or bi-monthly phone call with the key people that you need to have a phone call with. Just like this. Hey, Katie, where are we at with this project? What did we do last week? What are we doing right now? What is expected this week?
So what calendar is that you organize everything on? Is it one? Is it one that we can all use?
Yeah, again, I wish I could be more organized. Like for one of our companies, we use Follow Up Boss, and that's more of a CRM type system. But also I use that, and also I use my iPhone calendar. It's easy to do a voice memo, a voice and text. I can be doing something on the fly and say, hey, Siri, put this in my calendar. This is who I need to talk to. I'm old school, so I keep a note and pad with me every single place I go. I'll be at a birthday party. You got it with me. I have they'll take a pen and they'll write it on their hand just so they don't forget. But I think we need to be that way. I think we need to be very diligent on taking notes and being disciplined in our business and on our schedules. So yeah, I just use Google Calendar, Google Outlook. I use Google Docs, quite a bit for a lot of the tracking as well, like invoices, accounts receivable, anything else that I'm working on right now.
Love it. So tell us because you're new to the midterm game, which is fantastic, because it means you have so many insights to kind of have fresh eyes to the midterm rentals versus other strategies that you've used in the past. Tell us so far, what do you like about it? What's going well? And what are some challenges that maybe you didn't anticipate?
That's a really good question. I think, all in all, I've had a really good experience. I would say, in real estate, where we typically want results, we're results driven and we want instant gratification, especially when you're dealing with large assets, we expect, results right away. So one thing I would have to say is give yourself a break to learn the system and give yourself time and just go through the steps of the website does a really good job on walking you through how to get your property listed, how to post it, your photos, everything that needs to happen. But spend as much time without brain damage of where you're spending too much time where you're not receiving anything anymore. Mm-hmm. But spend deliberate time in there. Okay, I want to accomplish this. Okay, I'm getting stuck here. Where am I falling short? And then go through the process. I've really enjoyed it. Reaching out to the people that I'm either getting direct messages or I forget, it's the people that are unmatched, and reaching out to them and then just having a conversation with them as well. Hey, I'm not sure if you saw this one, take a peek at this one. Occasionally, I have a couple other friends that I've referred to Furnished Finders, and they've all been able to place properties on there and have all been successful with Furnished Finders. And they're like, hey, what'd you do here? I'm like, well, I did this. And then you collaborate on, okay, hey, for me, I had an issue with one of mine where I had a very odd pricing bracket. I wanted a very specific rent, and it wasn't coming up on anybody's feed. And so then I did a little research, deep dive, and they said, hey, your pricing bracket is wrong. You're not going to get the, X dollars 25, or 50. Make sure your rent pricing bracket is right here or right here, because that's where it's going to show up. Once I did that, then it was very fascinating. And I mean, in the real estate world, because when I'm talking to a seller, when I used to talk to sellers about pricing their homes, some of them are like, well, I want, $700,453.98, just some arbitrary number. But when you understand pricing brackets for buyers, it's the same thing for renters.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is my budget. This is what I want to spend. And I'm not going to look beyond that. Mm-hmm. Now, just because they say this is my budget and this is what I want to spend, doesn't mean that, okay, well, if I show them something a little bit nicer or a little more value or a community that's a lot nicer or more amenities, more bars, more coffee shops, more beach access, more trail access, they're going to be like, you know what, I'll spend an extra $200 or $400 or whatever dollars to live in this place. So that's why I say reach out to those people that maybe we're unmatched.
I think that's really interesting. And I want to circle back to something you said at the beginning of that, because I think Kelly and I and a lot of guests that we've talked to could really resonate with it, where you said, always trying to move forward and kind of not getting in your own way and learning things and trying something, but then almost treating yourself like a teacher, right? Okay, well, you've been stuck in this area for quite a while now. What do you need to do? Because a lot of landlords and property owners are only, doing it independently or doing it with a small team. And you have to be able to kind of think outside of your own mind and say okay, is this the best use of your time? Or are you doing this the best way? Is there a better way to learn here? Is there, a way that you can up your game? So I think that's really important that everyone keep in mind, and to give yourself the grace and the time to learn it, because it's a beast and you did not get to 100 doors overnight. And I think Kelly and I have had the privilege of talking to owners who have everywhere from one property to hundreds, and it's one step at a time, right? So I think that's really important to, like you said, like stay in the right mindset, which we talk about a lot.
And I would also add to, like, anybody that's new or newer or newish, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to the community, different platforms, and say, hey, I'm having an issue here. Like, who cares what you think? The most important thing is getting the answer to your question. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because if you don't ask, you're not going to have the level of success that you want. Always ask for help.
Okay, I think also something that I have to always tell myself is never start at ground zero. There's always someone who has done this before, no matter what you're doing, right? It doesn't matter if it's real estate or training a dog or trying to get in shape. There's always someone who's done it before. So don't start at square one, right? For instance, we're currently working on furnishing a studio, and we've never furnished a studio before. And my first instinct is I open a Google sheet and I start typing it out, and I'm like, wait, no, someone has done this before. I'm not going to start from the very ground. And then I go to Google, I go to my resources, I connect with people I know, and I say, does anyone have a spreadsheet? Does anyone have lists? Does anyone have advice on where to go? 10 minutes later, and I've got a huge leg up. So you're right. Like, there's no reason to ever start at ground zero here.
Katie, where was the ask? I wasn't on that list. I have lists too.
Girl, I got questions for you, because I've never furnished a 500 square foot space. I'm like, this is tiny.
Yeah, it's like how do I use the closet space well and make sure that they have just enough space to store everything.
Right.
I use Pinterest a lot. So my furnishings, I have 3 lists that I work off of from Pinterest, and it's like Airbnb prep list. Now I have noticed a lot that some stuff gets left off, like for whatever, like a wine key that gets left off a lot, or like vacuum I'm sure is on there. But yeah, it's like you take those lists and then you tweak it just a bit to fit what you desire for your properties, which is cool. So Justen, I'm hearing y'all are both saying what we hear a lot on the show, which is don't feel isolated. Use your network. We live in such a social media driven world right now that it's like there's answers out there and you don't have to feel alone, and I love that. And so so many of the guests we've had on the show is like it's all about the relationships you build. It's who you know, and how you help them, how they help you. So one thing that I think, Justin, you wanted to make sure and share with the audience of listeners is if you have an issue that comes up, how do you handle it? So in your experience, what's your style?
So when issues arise, I always try to keep a really good connection with the residents and make sure that I'm easily accessible. They know how to get a hold of me. I keep in touch with them and make sure that they're not on some deserted island. But I give them my cell phone number, call or text, email, and usually when an issue comes up, I address it. I try to address it as quickly as possible. I do have a team here in San Diego that, whether it's a plumber, electrician, a pest, a landscaping, you name it. If it's something that I personally can't handle, I'll call one of them right away and I get it addressed very quickly. Because I want them to have a very favorable experience, not only just in my property, but also with my city.
Mm-hmm. I liked your ant example.
Yeah. So I'll tell you about that. I had some residents come in. House was beautifully clean, just cleaned the day before. They move in. Everything smells great. It looks beautiful. And the next day they say, hey, we saw a couple of ants. I'm like, well, yeah, it's San Diego. It's the summertime. They're here. The next day, more ants, and then more. So then the next day they say, hey, there's more than yesterday. I said, okay. I literally stopped what I was doing, went to Home Depot, and bought every over-the-counter countermeasure of either repellent or killer I could possibly find. And dropped off a huge goodie bag. I think it was like $40 worth of stuff. And they're like, whoa, this is a lot. I said, well, I want to make sure that we don't have this issue going forward. And I'm very aggressive with this stuff. And they were just completely blown away that I went above and beyond. And then also just to make sure that I didn't have another question about that again from them, I told them I opted for a weekly pest service. And they were kind of like, well, you didn't need to do that. I said, I know I didn't need to, but I just don't want another phone call like this again. And I also believe that's part of me, how I manage my business is if I can eliminate the questions before they happen, then I've done a good job, not only for my sanity, but also for the guest that's there.
There you go. Yeah, that's great. So I think my last question for this section is there any advice that you have for other midterm investors or just real estate investors in general from your experience that you want to pass on?
Yeah, I would say do your homework, get educated. If you are going to do midterm, become familiar with the types of residents that are going to be there, and then read the forums on what do they want. Like, spend some time digging into the threads of the travelers and the corporate relocations and all this other stuff. Like, what are things that are important to them? And then you can eventually start building out a template for every property that you're going to go after. Now, if you're just a real estate investor, understand what numbers and also what league or game you're going to be playing. If you're going to be in, the AAA, so to speak, for baseball terminology, maybe that's a condo or a townhouse or a starter home. If you're going to move up to the big leagues or the all-stars, like, okay, well, is this like a, mid to luxury type property? And who's it going to command? Am I going into apartments? Am I going to go into commercial? But become familiar with what criteria you want and what types of returns you're looking for, and that are going to be acceptable to you. And only you, the investor, can dictate and say what you want. I know for me, what I'm always trying to shoot for is it's because that's what I'm happy with. I'm comfortable there. I have other investor friends that are like, I only want a grand slam. If it's not a grand slam, I don't want it. That's okay. Which is good news for the rest of the majority of the investors out there. Like, they're going to go after the entry level, the medium price homes, and they can turn around and buy that, fix it up, stick a midterm renter in there, and have that contract for 60 to 90 days, rotate it out, get somebody else in there another 60 to 90 days, and it'll be a great investment for them.
I love that.
So Justen, Kelly has told me that you have a property coming up that you're debating if you should do long-term or midterm. Why don't you walk us through that scenario and also the things that you are analyzing to see which direction you'd like to go with it?
Great question. So I had three options with this property here in San Diego. One, I fixed it up, so I was going to fix it up no matter what. Love the dog. So I was going to fix it up, and I could burr it, which would be the burr strategy. And then I could either long-term rent it. Okay, what are my rents going to be? What can I command for this type of a property on long-term rents? The next thing would be midterm. Okay, well, what do I have to do in order to get this midterm rental ready? What do I have to put into it? How much more do I need to invest into it? I didn't say spend, but it is an expense, which is a deduction on your taxes. But what do I have to invest into it to get the type of rent that I want to get from a midterm? Or do I want to flip it? If I flipped it, maybe I make $50,000, $60,000. Out of all of these scenarios, each individual investor has their entire game plan, what they're trying to accomplish. Now, if I wanted to just make the $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 and just flip the property, great. But my long-term plan is something much greater than $50,000-$60,000. And I know some investors are like, hey, well, you could take that and I could parlay that and I could parlay that and I could parlay. Yes, that's true if that's your strategy. And that was my strategy for the first 10, 15 years of doing this. But I had a friend of mine that was extremely wealthy said, hey, you're going to become rich. You won't become wealthy. And I spent some time on that. What does it mean to be wealthy? And once I figured that out, I opted to go more long-term midterm rentals. And, the types of return I want is I'm looking for anywhere between $500 to $1,000 positive cash flow on the investment. And if I have, 50 of those, that's not bad income, So
Yeah.
that was my strategy. That's kind of how I approach things.
So tell us more about that rich versus wealthy.
Yeah. So the gentleman that told me was several hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'd spent some time with him, and we'd go for walks. He liked to exercise, so we'd go for a walk. Say, Justin, come along, let's go for a walk. And he'd always have his Diet Coke, and we'd walk. And he goes, I didn't get to where I am by flipping properties or doing quick turns in the investment world. I got to where I am because I have a couple thousand units that pay me $500,000 a month, and I don't have to do anything. That is wealth. Like, I can become rich, sure. You can have a couple $1 million in the bank and not have really any major assets. Might not have any liabilities, which is great. Or I could have wealth where I'm making a couple $100,000 a month and living the life that I want, or I want for my family, and spending the time with my friends and family and however I desire. And that was what that meant to me. And I think everybody has their number. And in the social worlds, it's your FIRE, financially independent, retire early. I'm sure you guys have heard that. But if you take all your expenses and you multiply that, and then you multiply that again, you come up with your FIRE number. For me, one of my mentors says, hey, what would you be happy with monthly? What? And I'm pretty simple. I'm a very simple guy. I live very simple, very frugal. So I don't need a lot,
Right.
5-10 grand is plenty for me. It's just if I have more, or when I have more, or as I have more, it's just more I get to do, more properties I get to buy, more experiences my kids get to have. So that's what the rich versus wealthy meant to me.
That sounds low for California.
I'm conservative.
Okay, so that's a good point. So really, if you're looking at wealth as a way to set up systems so that it frees up your time, well, then you have time to invest in your family, invest in your friends, give back to others. It's like setting up that wealth, and we hear the term generational wealth at times, just really opens the door for, what are you made to do, and how can you bless others through it. So I really like that. That's cool. I do want to circle back to, for those of you who are thinking, do I want to try midterms? I'm going to give you a quick list of things that you can do. So we often hear long-term renters, should I try midterms? I don't really want to invest in the furniture if I don't know if it's going to work. So here's some quick tips. One, go to www.furnishedfinder.com/stats and check your area. You're going to see how many people are searching versus how many properties there are. So that's a great tool. Also, furnishings. There's some ways that you can put yourself out there without having to furnish first. So you could, you could go ahead and it's $99 to add your property on Furnished Finder, and that immediately gives you, even if you only have images that are with unfurnished, like let's say you just bought the property and you're not it's not furnished yet. You can put those pictures up there and say furniture coming soon, and you're immediately going to have access to tenant leads and those matched and unmatched housing requests. So then you can go through and say, okay, well, I've already looked at the map and I see this many people are searching monthly or yearly. Now who's actually in my area right now, and what prices are they searching? are they searching? Well, that's going to happen as soon as you add your first property. You'll have access to tenant leads. Another thing you can do is there's furniture partners like Court, which is really low pressure because you don't have to worry about, well, what system am I going to put in place to make sure all my stuff is accounted for? That would be through Court. A contract would be signed, and then you could put the liability back on the guests that are staying there if you wanted to. And so then it's of course going to be a little more expensive than buying your own furniture over time, but it gives you that opportunity to try it out for a round, which medical professionals typically travel 90 days. You get a lot of digital nomads that maybe want a month or 3 months, relocations or remodels. Sometimes they want 3 to 6 months. So you can try it out for a half a year or a quarter and really figure out, is this something that I like and do I want to pursue it without really having to jump all the way in? So if you're thinking of trying midterm rentals, just jump in there, get started somehow, and talk to those around you. Like we've been saying this whole episode, you're not the first. So look up hosts in your area and give them a call and say, hey, how was your experience? Should I jump into this midterm game? And that could be on Furnished Finder or Airbnb. Like see where your hosts are out there. Okay,
Also,
Justin.
just so everyone knows, there is a great, sorry to interrupt, Kelly, there's a great Facebook page or Facebook group rather, that Furnished Finder runs. That's a great place to, even if you're, a lurker, as they say, to get a feel of, it's primarily travel nurses in that group, which is a large travel, monthly travel base, but not all by any means. But it's a good way to you can sit back and kind of lurk and get a sense of what's going on, get what they're looking for, kind of feel the vibe too.
What's the name of the group?
If you search Furnished Finder and go into groups, you will absolutely find it.
Okay, I think Travel Nurse Housing is one of ours as well, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So last question, Justin. It would be irresponsible of us not to talk about escrow, since that is your main gig as co-founder of Alliance Escrow. So when it comes to escrow, let's first start off with defining it. What is escrow?
Yeah. So here in California, escrow, we are the neutral third party to a real estate or refinance transaction. So we are the party responsible that communicates between the buyer and the seller and the agents that handle all the paperwork and all of the we're the glue to the transaction.
Love it. And so how do you recommend that buyers and sellers prepare for the escrow process with their documents so that you're not like scrambling when you're like, oh, got my next property? So how do you want them to prepare and be ready for the transaction?
Yeah, so one of the best things that buyers or sellers can do is, one, make sure that they vet out and hire a really good real estate agent here. And we do have a lot of sellers that want to do a for sale by owner, but we still recommend them to have representation by a licensed real estate agent or a realtor. And then from there, the best way to be prepared is making sure that if your property is in a trust, like here in California, we highly, highly, highly recommend to have your property held in a trust. Have all your trust documents ready to go. Have a declaration of trust handy. Have your mortgage statement handy. These are going to be all important things. Have your IDs ready for us, because what we're going to do is we're going to take the purchase contract and we're going to start processing that between the buyer and the seller. One thing that we do send out is called a statement of information, and it's basically something that title does a deep dive on those individuals to make sure that there's no skeletons in the closet, but also more importantly, so if John Smith is buying a property, that it's not John W. Smith, it's John Smith. Like we're making sure we're tying the exact person to the exact property.
Yeah. How many people are normally involved on a deal through the process?
Yeah, here in California, on average, a lot of people don't know this, but it's anywhere between 30 to 35 parties to one transaction. And that's why escrow is, you're telling me. That's why escrow is super important, because we want to make sure that we're representing the sellers very, very well, and we're representing the buyers very, very well.
Something you said, Justin, is something that I always have to remind myself of, is those people who are on your official team, right? Your realtor, your property manager, even the escrow team, your lender. When I think of that group of people who are like the transactional team, I want to be the dumbest one. Like, I want to look at these guys in, the virtual room or whatever and say, okay, you guys all know what you're doing to such an amazing degree that you have my full trust, and whatever you say, I will do. So find those people, and find those people who absolutely know the ins and outs of real estate law in your area, because it's different from state to state. And who, the realtors who know, and the lawyers who know, do you need it in a trust? Do you need it in an LLC? Like, find those people, because that will make your life so much easier.
We really appreciate all of you being here with us. We want to know your feedback, so please shoot us over an email through Furnished Finder or comment on the episodes. We're here for you guys, and we appreciate y'all being here. And we're just having a lot of fun getting to hear all these different stories about midterm and just real estate investment strategies in general.